Brother! Wang Yuan turned around and stared at Jian Wushuang. Palace Master! Hall Master Yuan was pleasantly surprised. It is me. Took both of you some time to recognize me. Jian Wushuang smiled. Oh God, yes. You finally awakened. Wang Yuan charged at Jian Wushuang and gave him a bear hug. From what I have heard, it looks like I have been in slumber for a long time. Furthermore, your alchemist skills have improved greatly. Am I right? Jian Wushuang smiled. Of course. I am now the best alchemist in the eternal chaotic world. Wang Yuan said triumphantly. The best in the eternal chaotic world? Are you really that good? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Palace Master, Mr. Wang Yuan indeed possesses incredible alchemist skills. The reason why your soul could recover so quickly was because he made numerous ice soul elixir for you, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh! Jian Wushuang looked at Wang Yuan. Let's not talk about this. It is wonderful that you finally awakened from your slumber. I'll gather everyone else. Wang Yuan started transmitting messages. Jian Wushuang did not stop Wang Yuan. Soon, the message got through to Jian Nantian, Ji Wuming, Su Rou, Lin Lan, He Shou, Xueling Tian, and many other people who were close to Jian Wushuang. Wushuang. Jian Nantian and his wife looked at their son, elated. Dad, Mom, I am not a good child. I made both of you worry. Jian Wushuang apologized. It is okay. You have awakened. Jian Nantian did not blame him and heaved a sigh of relief. He took the most pride in his son. Jian Wushuang was not only the backbone of the Green Fire world, but also of the eternal chaotic world. Jian Wushuang then greeted Su Rou and the remaining people. He was surprised that many of his close friends had become much stronger. Wang Yuan had already been an extremely skilled alchemist before the Great Battle, though he was still far from being the best alchemist. Even though not everyone agreed that Wang Yuan was the best alchemist, he was confident that he was. His alchemist skills had improved greatly, seeing the attitude of the brown-haired elder man when he was requesting for Wang Yuan's service. His father, Jian Nantian, had previously been in the realm of Sir God. Now he was in the realm of Emperor God. Su Rou and Xueling Tian had both reached the realm of Sir God. Even though Green Fire World had an extremely conducive cultivating environment, these people would not have improved so greatly without time. How long have I been in slumber? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Soon, everyone within the palace were being served with good food and wine. They sat down and started chatting. Jian Wushuang finally knew how long he had been in a slumber. 24,000 years. Yes, after the great battle, he had fallen into a deep slumber. It had been 24,000 years since that great battle. To Jian Wushuang, this was a great amount of time. He had cultivated for less than 10,000 years since birth, unlike many almighty experts within the eternal chaotic who were at hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years old. Emperor Bai was an example of such an expert. He had been born in the First Era, and his age was beyond Jian Wushuang's wildest imagination. At the same time, Jian Wushuang got to know what everyone had done for him when he was in deep slumber. He knew the cost of building the Tying Soul Resurrection Formation and the Spiritual Pool. On top of this, the cost of making Ice Soul Elixirs. Big Boss Wang Yuan. Jian Wushuang looked at Wang Yuan gratefully and with excitement. Wang Yuan had had to make one Ice Soul Elixir every 10 years for him for 24,000 years. Ice Soul Elixir was an extremely high-grade elixir. If it had been any other alchemist in the eternal chaotic world, they might only have been able to make one, even if they had sufficient resources after hundreds of years. However, Wang Yuan had made 2,400 elixirs within this short amount of time. This was an enormous amount. Thank you. Jian Wushuang finally said these two words. Haha. You do not need to be so formal with me, brother, Wang Yuan answered casually. Their relationship went beyond life and death. They were brothers who went through thick and thin together. To Wang Yuan, it was nothing to spend some time on making some elixirs for Jian Wushuang. After a deep breath, Jian Wushuang started asking about what had changed in the Green Fire world. 24,000 years was a very long time. A lot had changed in the Green Fire world. There were now 26 Almighties, including Jian Nantian, who was an emperor god. There were numerous real gods and other geniuses. The green fire world really did grow. This is just the beginning. Given time, the number of experts within the green fire world will only increase, and it will be confirmed as one of the best places within the eternal chaotic world. Jian Wushuang felt that his hard work was worth it given how much the green fire world had grown and prospered. Wushuang, you should inform Emperor Bai and the rest of the great emperors that you have awakened. During the time that you were in slumber, they put in great effort to help you build the Taiying Resurrection Formation and the spiritual pool. Furthermore, it cost a fortune to keep these running, Jian Nantian said. Yes, I have already transmitted a message, Jian Wushuang smiled. He transmitted the message when he awakened. Emperor Bai and the rest would be on their way. Not just Emperor Bai, you should tell the experts from the special tribes. Furthermore, what is with the Black Dragon Emperor? Wang Yuan asked out of nowhere. Black Dragon Emperor? What's wrong? Jian Wushuang was curious. Don't act dumb. It is obvious that she is interested in you. When you were in your slumber, she would visit you once every now and then. She is the leader of her clan and has a lot of urgent matters to attend to. Yet she visited you more than Emperor Bai and the other experts. Wang Yuan asked playfully. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was stunned but helpless. He knew that Black Dragon Emperor was interested in him. However, he was already married. In this life, he would only love his wife and his wife alone. He would not accept anyone else. Looks like I have to speak to Black Dragon Emperor about this, Jian Wushuang muttered. Emperor Bai, Abysmal Saint Master, Ancestor Tianchen, and many other experts from the Sanctuary Alliance reached after a while. King Chen Xian, King Luo Yu, and the Black Dragon Emperor from the Special Tribes Alliance came along too. When everyone saw that Jian Wushuang had awakened, they were all surprised and elated. This was especially the case for the experts from the Special Tribes Alliance. Black Dragon Emperor was the happiest person of them all. When he saw that large number of visitors, Jian Wushuang held a banquet. At the banquet, some of the most powerful experts in the eternal chaotic world gathered to celebrate and have fun. Some of them toasted Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang toasted back in response. At the banquet, Jian Wushuang, you slept for 24,000 years. During this time, the eternal chaotic world changed. Emperor Bai smiled. Oh! Jian Wushuang looked over at Emperor Bai. The star of this banquet was Jian Wushuang, while Emperor Bai was second to only him. He sat together beside Emperor Bai while the remaining people sat in front of them. During the previous battle, we suffered great casualties, many of which were pillars of support of their respective clans. The situation in the eternal chaotic world changed, though the changes are not of importance to you. Aside from the Sanctuary Alliance, the Green Fire world is the strongest power in the eternal chaotic world, and the second is the lineage of stars. Emperor Bai smiled. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Green Fire world was the strongest power? Lineage of stars was second? He was the leader for both clans. Jian Wushuang rubbed his nose as he looked at Emperor Bai. He understood what Emperor Bai had implied. The more elite you are, the more likely it is that you will become a target in the eyes of others. It was good that the Green Fire world and the lineage of stars expanded and grew over time. However, there would be certain hidden risks. Now that the eternal chaotic world was not in the face of any threat, there would be internal fighting for resources. Within the Sanctuary Alliance, the great emperors would fight for their own power and standing. If Green Fire world and lineage of stars continuously remained so powerful, the other forces would fear them. This was especially the case for Green Fire world as its potential was limitless. Jian Wushuang thought to himself for a moment before he came to a decision. Hi everyone. Jian Wushuang stood up as his majestic voice was heard at every corner of the banquet. Everyone at the banquet turned and looked at him. Jian Wushuang continued. During the time I was in a deep sleep, there were many changes to the eternal chaotic world. Hence, the agreement between the Green Fire world and the rest of the eternal chaotic world should be amended as well. When the experts heard what Jian Wushuang had said, their faces turned pale. The agreement between Green Fire world and the rest of the eternal chaotic world, it was that no Almighty shall step foot onto the Green Fire world without permission. Clans could only send certain youngsters into the allocated area within the Green Fire world to cultivate. Once they reached the realm of real God, they have to leave. Many of the clans and tribes found it difficult to accept this agreement. Back then, Jian Wushuang had not been so powerful. However, he had in hand the strongest trump card that controlled the existence of Green Fire World and forced the other clans to sign the agreement. Now, with Jian Wushuang's power, he could force all of the youngsters who were cultivating in the Green Fire World to leave, and there was nothing they would be able to do. Jian Wushuang looked at everyone and smiled. Everyone calm down. I will not ask your youngsters to leave the Green Fire World. On the contrary, I will allow all experts, including Sir Gods, Emperor Gods, and Great Emperors, to freely enter the Green Fire World. You can even stay there for as long as you like. What? Everyone was stunned. Then they broke out in excitement. They were allowed into the Green Fire World? That was indisputably the best place for any cultivators to cultivate. The cultivation environment was many times better than the 10 sanctuaries. It was even better than Thunderbolt Island. Many of them had great desire to go there and cultivate. However, due to the agreement, they could only look at this sanctuary but not do anything. Now, Jian Wushuang had given them permission. Now that he had absolute power, he would not demand more, but even give concessions. Many of the experts were elated as they looked at Jian Wushuang gratefully. Jian Wushuang saw the reactions of these experts and smiled. If he wanted to, he could demand more from the eternal chaotic world by driving all other experts away. However, this would create resentment from the rest of the clans and cause them to have greater desire for the Green Fire world. They would not dare to do anything outrageous simply because he was around. However, if he were to leave one day, he would not be able to protect the Green Fire world anymore. The Green Fire world might be under assault. This could result in them losing their land or worse, getting killed. Now that he had taken the initiative and taken a step back to give the rest of the eternal chaotic world something they always wanted, it would allow the rest of the experts to feel grateful and not be so extreme in their actions if they really invaded the Green Fire world. Second, this would allow Green Fire World to integrate with the eternal chaotic world and become the ultimate dream place for all cultivators. The best case would be that the people of Green Fire World and the rest of the eternal chaotic world would mix to produce offspring within the Green Fire World. If this was the case, people would treat the Green Fire World as though it was their own hometown. If the Green Fire World faced any danger or threats, there would be experts to step out voluntarily to face them. However, even though I allow the top tier's experts into the Green Fire World, I hope all of you will abide by the law of the Green Fire World. If there is anyone who does evil or even goes on a massacre, then I am sorry. I will take care of you personally. Jian Wushuang's voice suddenly turned cold and he said, "Don't worry, Sword Emperor. We will definitely abide by the laws of the Green Fire World. If anyone dares to be funny, I will take care of them myself." Abysmal Saint Master stood up and said, Yes, don't worry, Sword Emperor. Whoever dares to play a fool within the eternal chaotic world will be our common enemy," the remaining experts and great emperors said. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang nodded his head in approval. Not bad. Emperor Bai looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang shrugged his shoulders. He wanted to do this for a very long time. Green Fire World was originally part of the eternal chaotic world, but it had been completely isolated for a period of time. Jian Wushuang really hoped that Green Fire World could completely integrate with the eternal chaotic world. However, it was a pity that the Green Fire World had had too much potential and he had not been powerful enough back then. If he had allowed the experts from the other clans to enter the Green Fire World back then, he would have completely lost control of the Green Fire World. Now, it was different. He was powerful enough to control the Green Fire World, and no one from the eternal chaotic world would try to do anything funny there. Even the great emperors within the Sanctuary Alliance had no choice but to listen to him, all except Emperor Bai. This was when he could give concessions to the rest. The banquet lasted 3 days and nights. The experts left after their hearts were full. Within Wushuang City, in a large garden, Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai sat together at a table. "Thank you, Emperor Bai, for all the things you did when I was in slumber," Jian Wushuang said gratefully. "It is a small thing, You fell into slumber because you fought Blood Emperor for us. Since you gave your all for the eternal chaotic world, we too gave our all to take care of you. Furthermore, you don't have to talk to me so respectfully. We are about the same power level right now. Emperor Bai smiled. In terms of fighting power, Jian Wushuang would still lose to Emperor Bai. However, Jian Wushuang had a lot of trump cards, such as secret skills of Star Palace, which allowed him to have fighting power 1,000 times more than normal, which would be far above that of Emperor Bai. Hence, Emperor Bai would not ask Jian Wushuang to treat him as though he was superior. All right, I will still call you Emperor Bai and neglect unnecessary etiquette. Jian Wushuang thought for a while before replying. Emperor Bai smiled as he whipped out a scroll. This scroll was the mountain river map. This belongs to you. After you fell into slumber, I kept this treasure. Now that you awakened, I shall return it to its rightful owner, Emperor Bai said. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up with happiness. He took the treasure and put it in his Qian Kuan ring. During that battle, Jian Wushuang casted the 7th seal of the 9-province seal and killed the Blood Emperor before he fell into deep slumber. He did not have enough time to keep the mountain river map. Jian Wushuang, did you receive this treasure from Xianxia? Emperor Bai asked out of nowhere. Ha! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows as he looked at Emperor Bai in surprise. Xianxia was his master. He had appeared during the final battle. However, Jian Wushuang had never spoken his name, and Xianxia had not introduced himself at all. How did Emperor Bai know of this name? Emperor Bai, you know my master personally? Jian Wushuang asked. Your master? Of course I know him. Come, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, back in the First Era, there was a little brat. He was the core disciple of his family. His family was very powerful and was the ruler of a territory. This little brat had a very high status within the family. Hence, he was a spoiled child. This little brat did everything he wanted to without giving it much thought. He would stir up trouble everywhere, but no one dared to stand up against him given how powerful his family was. This lasted until one day, this little brat provoked a clan that was much more powerful than his own family. Out of anger, that clan destroyed his entire family within 1 year and killed all of his loved ones. He was the only one that escaped. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang saw that Emperor Bai's eyes had started to tear up. Jian Wushuang understood immediately that that little brat was most likely Emperor Bai himself. I never thought that the most powerful man from the First Era was once a rich brat. Furthermore, his actions led to the annihilation of his entire family. Jian Wushuang thought to himself, there were many rich brats in this world. However, they were not born this way to be evil. They were like this because of their upbringing, which caused them to do things without giving much thought. Once these kind of rich brats experience great setbacks, they would either remain affected by the setback for the rest of their lives, or they would evolve into a better person. Emperor Bai was the latter. Even though the little brat managed to escape, he was extremely weak and powerless to do anything. There were assassins who were constantly after him. When he was desperate and was about to jump off a cliff, he met a mysterious man. This mysterious man managed to convince the little one not to jump. He was unwilling to resign himself to this fate. He felt anger, as this anger manifested into hatred. Under the effect of the words of the mysterious man, he wanted to take revenge. This mysterious man then gave him a cultivating technique called the heavenly creation skill. This teenage boy started to cultivate the technique and became very different from the remaining cultivators. His rate of growth was incredible and was unbeatable for the people in the same realm as him. He took one step at a time, from being a weakling to becoming the most powerful man in the First Era. He eventually destroyed his enemies and took revenge. Jian Wushuang's irises constricted. Heavenly creation skill, an inverse cultivation skill. This technique was given to him by a mysterious man. That mysterious man. Jian Wushuang stared at Emperor Bai. Like you should have guessed, that little brat was me when I was young. The mysterious man who gave me the cultivating technique was your master, Xianxia, Emperor Bai said. It's true. Jian Wushuang was right. That mysterious man was his master, Xianxia. He had never thought that the inverse cultivating skill Emperor Bai had been given to him by Xianxia. There were no inverse cultivators back in the ancient past. Emperor Bai is the first ever inverse cultivator in this world. That technique was given by my master. If that is the case, my master is the one who created the inverse cultivating skill. Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. Inverse cultivation. It was a brand new and unbelievable cultivating technique. Jian Wushuang was where he was due to this technique. As he got stronger, he slowly understood how powerful and terrifying this technique was. He had always wondered who had created such a powerful and magical cultivating technique. He knew that no matter who it was, it had to be someone incredible. Now all the clues pointed to his master, Xianxia. I have no idea whether this inverse cultivating technique was indeed created by your master. It might have been created by someone else and given to us through him. It does not matter. Your master is one of the most mysterious men I have ever met since the first era. Emperor Bai continued. People like Emperor 13 are incredibly powerful. He can partially ignore the restrictions of heaven and earth with his own power to reach the half-step divine demon realm. However, he is far less mysterious than your master, Xianxia. Back in the first era, when I reached the 7th step of inverse cultivation, your master came to look for me. I asked him if he gave me the inverse cultivation technique, or if he wanted me to do anything for him. It was a pity that he did not give me a clear answer. He said that I did not meet his requirements and he did not have any special requests. All he asked of me was to pass any future inverse cultivators the technique for the 7th step if I ever were to meet one. That's all. Jian Wushuang frowned. Emperor Bai was the first inverse cultivator to reach the 7th step. However, he never knew what Xianxia had wanted to do, or what he was really after. What were the requirements Xianxia was talking about? After that, I have not seen your master at all. The first era collapsed and the second era started to prosper. Inverse cultivation started to gain popularity within the eternal chaotic world. However, only the first 5 steps were available to the general masses. Hence, these inverse cultivators could only reach the realm of universe God. Furthermore, there is the terrifying inverse cultivation test which every inverse cultivator had to go through. Many of them died, and the only one who passed was Wu Bei. Even though he passed the inverse cultivation test and got the cultivation technique for the 6th step, he reached the peak of real God. That was where he was stuck. Emperor Bai said coldly. Jian Wushuang nodded his head to show he understood what Emperor Bai had just said. Emperor Bai had just said that Xianxia had told him to pass the 7th step of inverse cultivation to anyone who had great talent. Real God Wu Bei. Jian Wushuang knew him. He had passed the inverse cultivation test and managed to enter the 6th step. However, he was not very talented. Emperor Bai would not pass the 7th step to such an ordinary cultivator. The next inverse cultivator who had managed to rise up was Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had passed the inverse cultivator test and proven himself to be one of the most talented cultivators in the eternal chaotic world. Here, Emperor Bai was not stingy and gave him the technique for the 7th step inverse cultivation. Jian Wushuang recalled the first time he had met Emperor Bai. Emperor Bai had been very intimate and peaceful. He did not act all high and mighty. Back then, Jian Wushuang had suspected this was because of Emperor 13. Now he thought about it, it might have been because of Emperor 13, but he was not the main reason. The real reason was because both of them were inverse cultivators. Understood. Jian Wushuang exclaimed to himself. Many of the doubts he had had were answered. However, he still had 2 burning questions. The first, whether inverse cultivation was created by his master Xianxia and what was his purpose of doing so if he did so. The second, Xianxi's true identity. Jian Wushuang knew from past experience that Xianxia came from the ancient past and had been a very influential and powerful man back then. He might be the reason why 7-star Black Sect was in danger and the reason why many experts from the ancient past had fallen into deep slumber. What kind of identity and power did he have to create all this? Furthermore, Emperor 13 was from the 7-star Black Sect and was the leader of the 7 stars. If Xianxia was the reason why the 7-star Black Sect had been annihilated, why was Emperor 13 helping him? To be honest, I envy you, Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai said. Ha! Jian Wushuang looked at Emperor Bai, astonished. Mr. Xian Yi only passed me the inverse cultivating technique. He does not interact with me much. He took you in as a lineal disciple and gave you numerous treasures. He treats you no differently to the way you treat him. Emperor Bai muttered, envious. Emperor Bai thought that Jian Wushuang was someone who met the requirements and was the one who Xian Yi really needed. On the other hand, he did not meet the requirements, and hence did not qualify for such treasures. Jian Wushuang smiled. He had to admit that Xian Yi really did treat him very well, just how a master should. Emperor Bai, thank you for all this info. Jian Wushuang thanked him gratefully. After Emperor Bai said all those things, many of the doubts that Jian Wushuang had disappeared. Now he knew more about his master. Haha, you're welcome. I am looking forward to seeing what Xian Yi has in mind. Oh yes, this transmission token is for you. Emperor Bai laughed. Emperor Bai whipped out a token. This is? Jian Wushuang looked at the transmission token, confused. Emperor 13 asked me to pass this to you. He wants you to message him once you awaken. Emperor Bai said. Is that the case? Jian Wushuang said as he fell into deep thought. Emperor Bai left soon after. Within the garden, Jian Wushuang held the transmission token in his hands. Emperor 13. It is time we have a good talk. Let's not rush into this. Let me handle my other things first. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Jian Wushuang left the garden. On an empty ground within the Wushuang city, many figures were waiting. Some were standing while others sat cross-legged. Most of them came from the ancient god clan. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang appeared in front of these people. Ancient God Emperor. Greetings, Ancient God Emperor. The experts from the Special Tribes Alliance greeted Jian Wushuang with fanaticism. Many people were not convinced that Jian Wushuang was a competent leader initially. It could be because of his human bloodline. However, after the Great Battle, everyone within the Special Tribes Alliance and Sanctuary Alliance trusted him fully. This was especially the case for the Special Tribes Alliance. They only listened to someone very powerful. Jian Wushuang was definitely an incredibly powerful expert. Jian Wushuang looked at everyone and said, I want to speak to Black Dragon Emperor personally. Can all of you please give us some space? King Chen Xian, King Luo Yu and the rest were stunned. They looked at Jian Wushuang oddly before they walked off. Jian Wushuang and Black Dragon Emperor were left alone on the empty ground. Ancient God Emperor. Black Dragon Emperor smiled at Jian Wushuang. She was in black clothes and was stunning. Her crystal-clear skin was showing under her black clothes, which attracted the attention of many males. She also had an extremely cold aura. Without a doubt, she was extremely beautiful and attractive. Attractive to the point where even great emperors would fall for her. Black Dragon Emperor, I have heard that you visited me frequently during the time I was in slumber. I know of your feelings and I thank you for that. Jian Wushuang looked at Black Dragon Emperor and said. Black Dragon Emperor trembled slightly when she heard of this. Most people could have deduced that she had feelings for Jian Wushuang given how she had acted over the years. Black Dragon Emperor admired Jian Wushuang greatly. She believed that Jian Wushuang knew about it. However, Jian Wushuang did not speak about it at all. Now he was talking about it. Black Dragon Emperor took a deep breath and looked at Jian Wushuang fondly and in anticipation. Her admiration for him was very clear. She was waiting for his reply. Black Dragon Emperor, you should know that I already have a wife, Jian Wushuang said. Yes, but from what I heard, she left a long time ago, Black Dragon Emperor said. During the time Jian Wushuang had been in slumber, she had gone and inquired about everything related to Jian Wushuang, including the fact that Jian Wushuang had a wife. She only left, but is not dead. I will find her sooner or later and bring her back, Jian Wushuang said firmly. I don't mind, Black Dragon Emperor smiled. Jian Wushuang knitted his eyebrows. He did not expect Black Dragon Emperor to be so persistent. He looked at Black Dragon Emperor in the eye and said, I will not love a second person in my life. Hence, sorry. When the word sorry came out of Jian Wushuang's mouth, Black Dragon Emperor trembled and she turned pale. After a while, she looked up at Jian Wushuang. Her expression was not of pain or disappointment. She smiled at Jian Wushuang and said, I understand. Sorry for all the trouble, ancient God Emperor. I will not trouble you anymore after today. She bowed slightly to Jian Wushuang before leaving. She left very quickly, as though she was running away from Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stood there, looking at the back view of the Black Dragon Emperor. Even though he did not want to do this, all he could do was to shake his head. There was no way a forced relationship would work. Jian Wushuang already had someone in his heart. It was his wife. Lung Rushuang, even if his wife died, she would forever be his wife. Furthermore, his wife was still alive and there was still a chance he could reunite with her. There was no way Jian Wushuang could see himself having two wives at the same time. After the Black Dragon Emperor left, the other experts from the Special Tribes Alliance walked up to him. They could figure out what had happened after they saw Black Dragon Emperor leaving the place. They could only sigh at the bottom of their hearts. Ancient God Emperor, isn't it a little too cruel to reject her so directly? King Xianxia asked. Cruel? It might be cruel, but it's for the best. Jian Wushuang shook his head and said. Hearing this, the experts all nodded their heads. All right, everyone, go back to your own tribes. As for the Green Fire World, the experts from the Special Tribes Alliance too can come here as long as they obey the rules, Jian Wushuang said. King Xianxia, I will not return to the Ancient God Clan for the time being. Please handle the internal matters together with King Luoyu. If anything serious happens, you always can transmit a message to me. Yes. King Xianxia and the other experts nodded their heads and left. Jian Wushuang was alone on the empty ground. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and sighed. Things will get messy if I drag it out. It is better if it is settled now. After shaking his head, Jian Wushuang whipped out the transmission token Emperor had passed to him. Lord Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang transmitted a message over. You awakened? Emperor 13 asked calmly, or rather coldly. Yes. Jian Wushuang replied as he nodded his head. Come to the place where we first met. I will wait for you there, Emperor 13 said and stopped the transmission. The place where we first met? Chilly Wind Valley. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows as he smiled. He explained his plans to Wang Yuan and Jian Nantian before he left. Chilly Wind Valley, one of the special places on the ancient battlefield. Jian Wushuang was the first person to discover this place. He had come to explore this place several times, but he could never figure this place out. When he had explored the place after he had attained the battle power of an almighty, he had met Emperor 13. He had gotten a shock back then when Emperor 13 had appeared out of nowhere. Soon, Jian Wushuang reached the outskirts of Chilly Wind Valley. Inside Chilly Wind Valley, in the endless large dark hole, chill wind was blowing everywhere. Jian Wushuang recalled that when he was here for the first time, he had almost died to the chill winds. Now the chill wind posed no threat to him. In the air above Chilly Wind Valley stood a man in a white cloak. Lord Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang greeted as he bowed lightly. Emperor 13 looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Follow me. Emperor 13 dashed into the Chilly Wind Valley. Even though Jian Wushuang had many unanswered questions, he dashed in without hesitation. Jian Wushuang followed behind Emperor 13 as they traveled at terrifying speed. A while later, Jian Wushuang saw these gigantic, white jades. Have we reached the bottom of the Chilly Wind Valley? Jian Wushuang asked. This was where he met Emperor 13 for the first time. He had been surprised by Emperor 13 when they first met. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he saw Emperor 13 maintain his speed even as they approached these jades. Boom! The jades opened up and created a pathway for Emperor 13 to pass through. What? This is not the bottom of the valley. Jian Wushuang was astonished. He had initially thought that they had reached the bottom of the valley. This was not the case. He followed Emperor 13 deeper into the valley. The further they went, the more surprised Jian Wushuang became. Chilly Wind Valley is far too deep, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. From the entrance of Chilly Wind Valley to where he was then, they had at least traveled tens of millions of kilometers, yet they were still not at the bottom of the valley. They were not close to the bottom either, as the way forward was still pitch black. Even though Jian Wushuang was surprised, he maintained his speed. Another 7 minutes or so passed. Finally, they reached the bottom of the valley. Is this where the bottom of the valley truly lies? Jian Wushuang scanned his surroundings. The ground was scarlet red, just like a human's flesh. There were clouds of bloody mist around him. The most obvious structure was another passageway at one side. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes when he saw this passageway. The Chilly Wind Valley was not too far away from Greenfire World, and Greenfire World was located at the center of the forehead of a humongous head. The head was the most unbelievable thing Jian Wushuang had ever seen. Chilly Wind Valley was located right below the head. He followed Emperor 13 all the way down to the point that Jian Wushuang forgot how far he had traveled before he got here. He knew that he was inside the head. No matter if it was Greenfire World or the other unique sites of opportunity, they were located at the surface of the head. Now, Jian Wushuang entered the inside of that head. What would he find inside the head? Jian Wushuang's mind was racing. The head was the most valuable and mysterious place compared to the rest of the ancient battlefield. When Jian Wushuang looked through the formation on this head, the cultivators from the Greenfire World did try to enter this head and explore the interior, but to no avail. The furthest they could go was about a few million kilometers, as the skin of this head was extremely tough. Today he had reached the interior of the head. "Let's go," Emperor 13 said coldly as he walked into the passageway. Jian Wushuang thought to himself silently for a moment before following Emperor 13. The passageway was very big. The first noticeable things were the crimson walls at both sides. Jian Wushuang knew that he was inside a real head. He could not help and muttered to himself, "Are these walls really made out of flesh and blood?" He walked along the passageway for a short while. An open space appeared in Jian Wushuang's vision. On this open ground stood many crimson statues. When these statues saw Emperor 13 and Jian Wushuang walking over towards them, they turned alive as their crimson eyes opened. They were filled with killing intent as these eyes turned towards Jian Wushuang and Emperor 13. An extremely strong sense of danger rose in Jian Wushuang's heart when he saw these crimson eyes. He was startled. These statues, Jian Wushuang was sure that every single one of these statues was extremely powerful. Luckily, these statues did not attack and only looked at them once before closing their eyes. This could have been because of Emperor 13. Emperor 13 led the way forward as he walked past all of these statues. These statues should be the guardians of this passageway, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. In the ancient past, experts would have left special measures in their caves or sites of opportunities. Just like the expert from the ancient past, Wu Hun, he had left behind many Dao soldiers around him to stop the weaker cultivators from entering to startle him. In this passageway that Emperor 13 had brought Jian Wushuang through, they were within the humongous head. All the valuable secrets should be hidden here, hence, there should contain several measures along the way. Apart from the crimson statues, Jian Wushuang saw numerous special measures. There were many sophisticated formations, traps, and even more guards. When the guards deeper in the passageway opened its eyes, Jian Wushuang's head went blank. These guards must have unimaginable power. With these measures, it would be impossible for even great emperors to enter. They would most probably die. Even if the emperor by entered, he might be able to survive due to his unique constitution, but he would never reach the deepest part of the passageway. The only reason Jian Wushuang could reach so far in was because of Emperor 13. At the end of the passageway was the core of the humongous head. Here it was a vast, dark space. This dark space was limitless and endless. At the center of this dark space, a province floated peacefully. Whoosh! Whoosh! Emperor 13 and Jian Wushuang appeared on this floating land. Once he set foot on the land, Jian Wushuang looked up and saw a platform. This platform was extremely big. There were 99,999 steps leading up to the platform. At the end of the steps, at the top of the platform, stood a throne. There was a figure sitting on this throne. It was a bold man with sharp eyebrows. His eyes looked as though they were the sun and moon. He sat there, looking down at everything with dignity. It was as though everything in this world submitted to him, and he was the sole ruler of this world. He. Jian Wushuang stared at the bold man on top of the platform. That man looked familiar as his facial features were the same as the gigantic head. Without a doubt, this was the owner of that gigantic head. Suddenly, the man who sat on the throne looked down at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were moving slowly as though they were a galaxy. Under that stare, Jian Wushuang felt that the world lost its colors. The surrounding scene started to change quickly. He was looking at the highest point in this world. Here it was as though he was standing beside heaven. Here he saw the same bold man. This man was unimaginably large. Is this how big he really is? Jian Wushuang was stunned. The size of the head was already gigantic. Green Fire World was at the center of the forehead, but its size was negligible compared to the rest of the head. If the head was already this big, then how big was his whole body? Jian Wushuang looked at the complete divine body of this bold man. He was amazed. At this moment, Jian Wushuang noticed that this place was surrounded by thunderous clouds as a unique aura gathered and started to suppress him. It tried to tear him apart and annihilate him. This aura was heaven's will. This bold man was making an enemy with heaven's will. Suddenly, the bold man looked up and his eyes burned with determination. I will fight the heavens, I will fight the earth. I will fight this world just to attain the ultimate doctrine. If the heavens were to stop me, I would tear them apart. If the earth were to stop me, I would split it apart. If everyone in this world were to stop me, I would kill everyone. His majestic words forced the surrounding heavens will back a great distance. You could hear the angry roars and shoutings, but none dared to continue their suppression. Jian Wushuang was stunned. His head was dizzy at this unbelievable scene. The man's words were ringing in his ears. If the heavens were to stop me, I would tear them apart. If the earth were to stop me, I would split it apart. If everyone in this world were to stop me, I would kill everyone. How domineering was that? How much confidence did that man have? A single look forced back the heaven's will. In front of him, even heaven's will had to give way. Boom! Jian Wushuang was still in shock as the scene changed. This time it was the scene of a vast battlefield. The battle had long started on this battlefield. The entire sky was tinted crimson red. The heavens at the highest point of the battlefield had many cracks as water was leaking out from it. It was evident that there was a hole in the heavens. On the ground below, worlds started to crumble as infinite amounts of living things were annihilated and died instantly. Many super-powerful experts died in this battle. Many of their bodies turned into mountains or seas of blood. This was the ancient battlefield, and this was the ultimate battle that had caused the end of the ancient past era. The battle was nearing the end. Many of the experts who were battling it out crazily stopped. At the center of the battlefield stood a humongous, bold man. A spear pierced through his chest and heart. This spear contained an incredible corrosive power which continuously corroded his divine body. This injury should have been fatal. However, he stood tall even though there was a spear through his body. The heavens will continually suppressed him from above. He scanned his surroundings. Everything within his vision subsided. Aside from the suppression from heaven's will, trillions of experts in the divine demon realm and countless experts stood there, staring at him with great killing intent. There were 3 people at the front. The first man was a bald man in white cloak. He was constantly smiling and was barefooted. He stood there in the sunlight as white light flashed off his skin. He gave off a peaceful and holy vibe. The second person was a woman in a crimson cloak. She had an extremely cold vibe and felt like no one could compare to her. She was just standing there, but many of the experts in the divine demon realm wanted to bow down to her. The last man was a demon king of his era. He wore purple armor and had a very big body. He held a crimson spear and was standing on top of his crimson dragon. He radiated a demonic aura. These 3 experts fixed their gazes on the bold man with great killing intent. They were ready to deliver the killing blow. Right then, the bold man said majestically, I lived my life proudly. How can I die at the hands of mere mortals like you? Die! Along with me! As soon as he finished speaking, his incredibly gigantic divine body started to crumble, starting from his limbs. Only his head was left. Then, a terrifying power swept forth in all directions. The entire ancient battlefield threatened to crumble. Heavens will dissipated and heaven cracked into pieces. The entire earth shattered. It was an apocalypse. Jian Wushuang looked closely at whatever he was shown. The heavens cracked and countless divine demon experts died. Suddenly, everything flickered and turned dark. Jian Wushuang returned to the floating province with 99,999 steps. This is... Jian Wushuang turned pale. He just came out from the ancient display. However, he did not finish watching the second scroll of the ancient display. He only saw the bold man's divine body explode after casting certain techniques. This caused heaven and earth to crack and shatter. Jian Wushuang had no idea what happened next. What happened after this? After this bold man died, what happened to those who attacked him? And about the heaven's will? Jian Wushuang's heart twitched when he thought about this. That was the first time he felt the real heaven's will. He could sense there were rules of order within the eternal chaotic world, but the heaven's will was of even higher level. Who could be at the level to understand and use heaven's will? Only the superpowers back in the ancient past who became so powerful that even heaven and earth disapproved of his existence. Then would the heavens will come and suppress that expert personally. Who was that bold man in the ancient display who could force heaven's will to dissipate with one look? How powerful must he be? Jian Wushuang took a cold breath when he thought of this. You should have seen those things. Emperor 13 looked over and said. Yes. Jian Wushuang said. Right when he was about to ask more questions, Emperor 13 continued. I know that you have a lot of questions right now. I cannot and will not answer any of them. When the time is right, you will know everything. Jian Wushuang was caught by surprise, but he did not proceed with raising his doubts. Emperor 13 looked up at the bold man and waved his hand. A unique energy radiated out towards that man. The energy fused with the dark space. Then, a streak of brilliant light was seen in the dark space. This streak of light began to enlarge before revealing its true colors. It was a gigantic, gray monument. It was 10,000 feet high and was made up of gray crystals that was not ever seen before by Jian Wushuang. The gray monument floated in the dark space and soon moved in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang studied the monument but could not see anything. It was a blank monument as it had no inscriptions at all. It was an ordinary monument. However, Jian Wushuang knew that this monument was definitely extraordinary as it was hidden so well in the depth of the head. This is the heaven-suppressing monument. There are 9 of them in this world. One of such monuments is an extremely high-grade treasure. If you manage to gather all 9, you can suppress the heavens and earth. Emperor 13 said with a flash of excitement in his eyes. Jian Wushuang was stunned. He just saw the ancient display and knew for sure that heaven's will was something that is real and present in this world. If Emperor 13 said that one could suppress the heavens and earth, did he mean it could suppress heaven's will? Jian Wushuang took a cold breath when he thought of this. The heaven-suppressing monument is very special and contains many extremely profound and complicated hidden secrets. It is extremely useful for you. I will activate the hidden secrets within the monument. You should stand here and try to understand them, Emperor 13 said. Understand them? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Given how powerful the heaven-suppressing monument was, how amazing were the secrets it contained. Emperor 13 activating the hidden secrets within the monument was like giving him an opportunity for him to become even stronger. Jian Wushuang had many burning questions, but he ignored them all and started to prepare to understand the hidden secrets. Remember, you only have one chance. How much you can understand depends on you, Emperor 13 said as he started to form seals with his hands and placing them onto the monument. Instantly, the monument, which was 10,000 feet tall, radiated a special aura. At the same time, a gray air current appeared. The gray air current seemed extremely mysterious. Anyone who recognized it would be in disbelief. This air current was rare even in the ancient past. It was the air of chaos. Air of chaos was one of the things that the experts from the ancient past sought after crazily. The air that gushed out of the monument was the air of chaos. Hum, hum, hum. The air of chaos started to drift towards Jian Wushuang as it completely surrounded him like a cocoon. This is... Jian Wushuang widened his eyes in surprise as he stared at the air that was surrounding him. Even though he could not recognize the air, he could feel how pure and concentrated the energy which was contained in the air was. Never had he seen any energy so pure. Without hesitation, he started channeling the heavenly creation skill. As this skill continued to be channeled, all the air of chaos was absorbed through his pores and was converted into his own divine power. My divine power is improving at such a fast rate. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist in excitement. He could feel that he was getting stronger at an extremely fast rate. This speed was not achievable with just self-meditation or any random treasure. The rate of improvement was not so great back when Jian Wushuang was meditating beside the Supreme Emperor Stone. However, this gray airflow was not the truly valuable opportunity. Ha! Jian Wushuang looked up and stared at the 10,000 feet tall heaven-suppressing monument. Originally, this monument had no inscriptions at all. Slowly, ancient inscriptions started to appear at the top of the monument. It was gold in color, in a language Jian Wushuang had never seen before. This was completely different from any language there was in the eternal chaotic world. These words were not a unique language from the ancient past. There were many ancient past battlefields left behind in the eternal chaotic world, many of which contained certain ancient languages. These ancient languages had some resemblance to the modern languages the people of the eternal chaotic world use. Jian Wushuang would recognize them if he saw it. However, Jian Wushuang could not recognize these words at all. What are these words? Jian Wushuang was staring intently at the words that appeared at the top of the monument. These words appeared slowly as one stroke appeared at a time. Jian Wushuang was infatuated with these inscriptions. In his eyes, these were not words. They were a whole world. He saw a whole new world within these words. Within that world, there was chaos and no elements at all. However, evolution started to happen as the chaos slowly evolved into mountains, rivers, and the earth. These would eventually make a new world. They were the foundation of that world. Only after the world was made then life would appear within this world. In the dark space, Jian Wushuang stood on the floating province. His divine body was surrounded by the air of chaos as it gushed into his body steadily. The 10,000-foot tall heaven-suppressing monument floated in front of him. On the heaven-suppressing monument, ancient words colored in gold appeared slowly and sequentially. The number of words started to increase slowly. Even though these were words inscribed into the monument, what Jian Wushuang saw was the evolution of a whole new world. He was infatuated with this process and was immersed in it. Emperor 13 sat cross-legged beside him before closing his eyes. Time started to pass. The number of inscriptions on the monument started to increase as time passed. Every hour or so, a new word would appear on the monument. This monument was 10,000 feet tall. Hence, tens of thousands of ancient words were nothing as compared to its huge size, much less one of these words. Millions of such inscriptions could fit onto the heaven-suppressing monument. Time passed quickly. After a very long time, the golden inscriptions finally covered every corner of the heaven-suppressing monument. The heaven-suppressing monument had no more room to fit any more inscriptions into. Soon, the last inscription was done. Jian Wushuang, who was immersed in the evolution of that world, heard a boom within his heart. Before the world he was immersed in finally crumbled as his consciousness returned to the real world. He looked at the heaven-suppressing monument once again and was in disbelief when he saw the countless number of golden inscriptions. Unbelievable! This heaven-suppressing monument is definitely made by an unbelievable technique. Jian Wushuang thought as he clenched his fists. Without a doubt, the heaven-suppressing monument was a precious treasure. Even the mountain river map could not compare. Within the heaven-suppressing monument, he saw the evolution of a whole new world. From the beginning of the world, when everything was complete chaos, to finally when life was born. Jian Wushuang had seen the entire process as he meditated at the heaven-suppressing monument. How incredible was that? It was a pity that Jian Wushuang had only seen up to the point the first life had come about and the scene had ended. This might have been because there was only one heaven-suppressing monument. He guessed that he needed to gather all 9 heaven-suppressing monuments before he could finally see the entire process. Sigh! He exhaled lightly before he looked around. He saw Emperor 13 opening his eyes, looking at him. "You are awake?" Emperor 13 spoke, cold as ever. "Yes, Emperor 13. How long have I been here, meditating?" 1,081 years, Emperor 13 said. "What?" Jian Wushuang was shocked. It was not because he felt that 1,081 years was long. He had lived for tens of thousands of years. He had been in slumber for 24,000 years. 1,000 years was nothing compared to that. The reason why he was shocked was because he felt that time had barely passed after he had started meditation to the evolution of the world. He thought he would take a very short while, maybe around half a day. However, 1,081 years had passed. "So much time has passed?" Jian Wushuang exclaimed. He finally understood how the experts from the eternal chaotic world could meditate tens of thousands of years at one go. When an expert at that level used all his heart to meditate, he would not feel time had passed even though tens of thousands of years had gone. You should check out what changed within you. You should have benefited greatly during these 1,000 years, Emperor 13 said. Jian Wushuang was stunned before he checked his own body out. He first looked at his divine power. During the time he had been meditating, the gray airflow had been absorbed by him continuously and turned into divine power. His divine power should have improved greatly. Once he checked that out, he was pleasantly surprised. I broke through? Jian Wushuang widened his eyes in surprise as elation was written all over his face. With Jian Wushuang's fighting power and attitude, any normal improvement would not have resulted in such a big expression of emotion. But now, he could not help it, his improvement was too great. The divine power within his body was near to 10 times the original. His divine power was already almost limitless and could allow him to reform his body a couple of times. Now that amount of divine power had increased by 10 times. It was not just the amount of divine power, but also the quality of it. His divine power had just evolved. Jian Wushuang had been dreaming of this for a very long time. This evolution was not through any secret skills or techniques. He needed to acquire it through a breakthrough. The evolution would only occur when he broke through from the second phase of inverse cultivation to the third phase. Yes, Jian Wushuang had broken through. During the 1,081 years, he had continuously absorbed the air of chaos into his body to turn into divine power. His divine power had increased at an insane rate. Furthermore, one only needed more divine power to break through from the second phase to the third phase. While he was meditating, his divine power had met the required standard and he had broken through. Now, he was in the third phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation. This was the ultimate phase. Ultimate phase of 7th step inverse cultivation. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist, excited. Even though it was a mere one phase difference between the second phase and the ultimate phase, the difference in power was glaring. Based on the amount of divine power it was as though there was an ocean of divine power within Jian Wushuang. With such a vast amount of divine power, it would be extremely difficult to kill him as he too had the perfect chaotic holy body. His divine power and divine body were 10 times as powerful as before. His combat power erupted. With his current power, he could easily kill great emperors using strength alone. The ultimate phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation gave one power far greater than what a great emperor could possess. The power was equivalent to that of an expert in the realm of divine demon. Emperor Bai reached the ultimate phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation and was the strongest in this world. However, Emperor Bai was strong not only because of this, but because he managed to grasp a little of the rules of order. Rules of order, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself as he opened his palm slowly. Both palms were outstretched as he channeled two unique energies at the center of his palm. These two energies evolved from the power of spacetime and the reincarnation power. However, a glint of excitement flashed across his eyes when Jian Wushuang looked at these two types of energies. Rules of order. This is the rules of order. Rules of order. Jian Wushuang roared with laughter. That's right. The two types of energies in his palm were the spacetime rule of order and reincarnation rules of order. He now had control over both powers. During the 1081 days, he had been completely immersed in the evolution of heaven and earth. Before heaven and earth could evolve, the rules of order had to come about first. The rules of heaven and earth was the highest form of power in this world. The Supreme Four Doctrine and the Nine Heaven God Doctrine would evolve and eventually form rules of order. The rules of heaven and earth would branch off into the Supreme Four Doctrine and Nine Heaven God Doctrine to form everything there was in the world. Jian Wushuang had seen the evolution clearly during the 1081 years he had meditated. Not only did he see, but he also felt and understood the evolution process. After he understood the process, he tried it himself and managed to master the spacetime rule of order and the reincarnation rules of order. Jian Wushuang had finally grasped the rules of order, and he grasped two different types of rules or order. Even though his understanding was minimal, he had still managed to grasp it, which had helped him evolve to become stronger. I am in the same realm as Emperor Bai. Both of us are in the ultimate phase of the seventh step inverse cultivation, and both of us have a grasp of the rules of order. However, I have grasped two rules of order and have the complete ancient god bloodline power. If I combine the power of them all, Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang had the lead based on raw power and understanding of rules of order. As for the secret skills, Emperor Bai cultivated the 9-star armor from the 7-star Black Sect and was at the golden armor scripture. This secret skill was very powerful. Furthermore, he had cultivated another very powerful secret skill. It was a pity that he did not have the complete version of the secret skill. Hence, he could not use the skill to its fullest potential. After the Great War, Emperor 13 had handed him the complete version of the secret skill. Now, he could maximize the power of the secret skill. It had been 24,000 years since the Great War was over and Emperor 13 handed Emperor Bai the complete version of the secret skill. Emperor Bai should have successfully cultivated this skill to become even stronger. Hence, Emperor Bai had mastered several incredible secret skills and techniques. Jian Wushuang was not too shabby either. He had the top-tier secret skill from the ancient god clan, the immemorial celestial body. He had cultivated the second scripture which would boost his fighting power greatly. As for the other secret skill, moon-picking skill, it too was extremely powerful. As for secret skills of Star Palace, that was one of the trump cards Jian Wushuang had, and that could enable him to destroy all foes. As for treasures, he had the Mountain River Map and the Soul-Swallowing Pearl, two high-grade treasures. The Mountain River Map could suppress everything. On the other hand, the Soul-Swallowing Pearl could be used with his soul attack to create an extremely powerful attack which could threaten even Emperor Bai. The overall battle power of Jian Wushuang would not be weaker than Emperor Bai's. To really differentiate who was more powerful, they needed to have a battle. If I have the chance in the future, I really want to spar with Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang smiled eerily. Jian Wushuang had benefited greatly from the 1080 years he spent meditating. Right then, Emperor 13 stood up. He held out his right hand, which contained an ancient, black tower. Emperor 13 tossed this tower in front of him. This tower enlarged and soon it turned into a large tower in front of Jian Wushuang. Emperor 13, this is? Jian Wushuang looked at the black tower, puzzled. This tower radiated an ancient and majestic aura. Without a doubt, this tower was an incredible treasure. This is the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower. I made this personally a long time ago. However, I am not gifted as a blacksmith. Hence it was just an ordinary treasure back in the past. You should be able to benefit from it greatly now if you try to venture inside, Emperor 13 said. Sword Doctrine Trial Tower? Is it a trail tower targeting one's understanding of the sword doctrine? Jian Wushuang asked as he squinted his eyes. The restrictions in this world are far too powerful. I can only guarantee you 1,000 years inside. Treasure the time you have inside, Emperor 13 said and explained no further. Jian Wushuang was tempted. He knew this black tower was extraordinary. Furthermore, this tower had been made by Emperor 13 personally to target the sword doctrine, which should benefit him greatly. Jian Wushuang stopped hesitating as he dashed inside the tower. After he entered the tower, he realized he was in the middle of a vast, dark space. It seemed like there was no end to the space. It was big enough for battles to occur in. Ha! My strength and bloodline power are restricted? I cannot use them freely? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself as he squinted his eyes. He realized that his divine power was being suppressed to the level of an ordinary expert in the divine demon realm. At the same time, he realized he could not use his bloodline power at all. Within the vast dark space, figures started to form in front of Jian Wushuang. A young man who had a devilish look appeared. He held a long sword as he stared at Jian Wushuang with his emotionless eyes. Then, whoosh! This young man attacked. He appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and slashed with his long sword. This slash looked normal and it contained no sword skill. However, this ordinary slash was extremely fast with the power of a divine demon and some rules of order. Is he my opponent? Jian Wushuang stared at the devilish young man and smiled lightly. I also managed to master rules or order but am not familiar with it yet. I should take this chance to familiarize myself with this new power. Jian Wushuang attacked as he slashed his blood mountain sword. This slash contained the power of a divine demon and the spacetime rules of order. Clang! Both long swords collided with equal power. The moment the swords collided, the devilish young man flicked his sword up in a weird manner as the sword was headed for his wrist. Jian Wushuang was caught by surprise as he quickly drew back his sword in response. Right then, the devilish young man used a little strength and the sword was headed for Jian Wushuang's throat at lightning speed. What? Jian Wushuang turned pale. At first, he knew that the devilish young man was not a simple opponent as his sword skills were simple and smooth. However, after they started sparring, he realized all these simple moves flowed extremely smoothly. He was perfect. Jian Wushuang was suppressed by the simple sword skill. A slash, a flick, a stab, a jab. Jian Wushuang finally turned serious. A unique sword essence radiated out from him. It was as though he had turned into a large, dark vortex. Sword Principle Xian Luo. Mixed Element Spirit. Clang, 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 clang. Collisions between the metallic blades could be heard clearly. Jian Wushuang had already used the sword skill, Mixed Element Spirit, to its full potential, while his opponent simply used ordinary attacks. Within the eternal chaotic world, any cultivators who cultivated the sword doctrine could cast these attacks easily. However, Jian Wushuang was completely suppressed by these simple attacks. The mixed element spirit he was casting was wonderfully refined. However, even this sword skill could barely fend off those simple attacks. Jian Wushuang could only retreat slowly. His sword skills were completely suppressed and he could not even use them to their full potential. Suddenly, clang! After a flurry of attacks, the sword that the devilish man held slashed across Jian Wushuang's wrist as the wrist was sliced off. Together with the blood mountain sword, the devilish young man then stopped his attacks. Jian Wushuang stood there in the dark space in disbelief. He looked at the wound on his right hand before regenerating the hand immediately after channeling his divine power. He was overcome by waves of shock and disbelief. How can this be? How can such simple attacks suppress me? I was completely suppressed and not able to fight back at all. Are those really just simple attacks? Jian Wushuang was shaken to the core. His understanding of the sword doctrine was already extremely high. This was the case in the eternal chaotic world. He was the most powerful sword cultivator. The other almighties who excelled in sword doctrines were no match for him. Jian Wushuang too thought that his understanding of the sword doctrine was extremely deep. Back in the Blood Emperor sanctuary grounds, he had been unable to suppress the Blood Emperor even though he had the superior power advantage. He then realized his experience in battle was nothing compared to that of the experts from the ancient past. He had to admit that even though there were incredible sword skills in this era, it was nothing compared to those from the ancient past. He had never thought that he would lose to someone who had equal power to him and only used the basic attacks. And he was completely suppressed. His sword skills were like those of a kid compared to those of the devilish young man. It was laughable. Right then, Jian Wushuang, your sword skills and understanding of the sword doctrine might be top tier in the first era. However, back in the ancient past, your understanding of the sword doctrine would be far too weak. You were not even qualified to be called a sword doctrine cultivator. You are an amateur. Emperor 13's voice appeared in the dark space. Amateur. Jian Wushuang was stunned. If the experts from the eternal chaotic world heard that their sword emperor was being called an amateur, there would be a great commotion. One of the strongest men in the eternal chaotic world, the man who was famous for his sword skills, Jian Wushuang. But in the eyes of Emperor 13, he was just an amateur? Everyone would usually look down on the person who said that, but Emperor 13 was the one who said it. Those who saw the battle between Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor, including Jian Wushuang, could not refute this. You are an amateur. You don't even know what sword doctrine truly is. You do not need too much style nor too much power. A person who does not know much about sword doctrine can only unleash 10% of an extremely powerful sword skill, but a person who understands what sword doctrine truly is can unleash incredible power with just a simple skill. In your case, you are the former, Emperor 13 said. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang laughed bitterly. I never thought that my understanding of the sword doctrine was so laughable. This is not to blame you. In this era, the most powerful expert is only in the peak chaotic realm. Rules of order is far too high level for most of you as all of you live under the restrictions in this world. It is far too difficult to experience what sword doctrine truly is. Emperor 13 continued. It was true. Jian Wushuang was the strongest sword user in this era. The experts in this era were far too weak. If they had been born in the ancient past, the sword doctrine Jian Wushuang would see or experience would be far more than in the eternal chaotic world. The sword doctrine trial tower can allow you to experience the higher form of sword doctrine. Just like your first opponent, he is considered a beginner in sword doctrine. If you can defeat him with your sword skills alone, you will be considered a beginner as well, Emperor 13 said. He is considered a beginner. Jian Wushuang looked at the devilish young man fiercely. He waved his hand as the Blood Mountain sword flew back into his hand. Let's go. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang attacked once again. He battled the young man fiercely with all the sword skills he knew. Before long, he had lost again. Again! Jian Wushuang was not discouraged and he attacked again. He was completely immersed in his battle against the young man with a devilish look. Even though there was a large gap between the understanding of sword doctrine between the two, Jian Wushuang realized he had begun to understand more about the sword doctrine after multiple sparring sessions. Sword skill can be cast in this manner? Coherence, smooth. A simple sword skill can be more powerful as compared to some top-tier ones. Sword, it can be used like this? Jian Wushuang was a fast learner. He lost countless times against the devilish young man. He would always learn something from each and every defeat, whether it was from his battle techniques or from his sword skills. Or he would figure out certain techniques the young man would use in his sword skills and learn from it. Even though he was being suppressed in every manner, he was constantly learning from his opponent and slowly becoming a stronger cultivator. After 3 years, Jian Wushuang still lost to the devilish young man, but was no longer suppressed. 5 years later, the devilish young man could only suppress Jian Wushuang in the form of sword skills. Even though Jian Wushuang's defeat was inevitable, it would take longer before he was actually defeated. 17 years later, Jian Wushuang could fight the devilish young man evenly head-on. 32 years later, clang! Sparks were created as the long swords collided against each other. Jian Wushuang charged forward as the long sword in his hand turned into lightning and stabbed towards his opponent. The speed was too fast to be described with words. Clang! The tip of the blade collided with the body of the devilish young man. The blade did not pierce his body, but the impact caused him to lose balance and stumble a few steps backwards. After he steadied himself, The devilish young man looked at Jian Wushuang. This time he did not attack. At the same time, his body started to evaporate. Looks like I finally defeated him. A hint of joy was seen in Jian Wushuang's eyes as he saw the body of the devilish young man start to evaporate. Up till today, he had been inside the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower for 32 years. During this time, he had been constantly battling the devilish young man. They had fought over tens of thousands of times. Initially, he had been completely suppressed. After all these years of hard work, Jian Wushuang had finally defeated the devilish young man. There had been great improvements in Jian Wushuang's sword skills, and his understanding of the sword doctrine was a level higher compared to before. The reason why I can defeat him is not just because I have a better understanding of the sword doctrine. I have with me sword principle Shen Luo, which was one of the most powerful sword principles back in the ancient past. This helped me out greatly during our battles. If I were to use the most simple sword skills, I would need some more time before I could defeat him with the simple skills. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. However, he could still go even against the devilish young man if he only used the most simple sword skills. According to Emperor 13, he should be a beginner in sword doctrine. From an amateur to a beginner, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. In the space in front of him, another figure started to form slowly. This time, his opponent was a graceful lady in white cloak. She had a cold gaze. This was his second opponent in the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower. Her sword skills were much stronger compared to the devilish young man's. Soon, the lady in white cloak attacked. Jian Wushuang fought back, but was defeated easily. On the floating piece of land, the ancient, black Sword Doctrine Trial Tower stood tall. Emperor 13 sat down cross-legged again. He looked at the tower as his vision turned cloudy. Sword Doctrine. There is no end to the Sword Doctrine. Even though I reached the peak of the Sword Doctrine, I still feel that my understanding is not complete. What exactly is the perfect Sword Doctrine? Emperor 13 muttered to himself before closing his eyes slowly. He had reached the peak of the Sword Doctrine. Even during the prime time during the ancient past, few could have reached the level he had. There was almost no one who was stronger than him in the aspect of Sword Doctrine. Even so, he was still trying to chase after a better or higher form of sword doctrine. There was no limit to the doctrine. This was also the case for sword doctrine. Jian Wushuang, who was in the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, was immersed in the battles he had with countless number of opponents. He was learning from his imperfections during these battles. Time continued to pass. 1,000 years flashed by in the blink of an eye. The Sword Doctrine Trial Tower still stood tall in the vast, dark space. Two figures were engaged in a heated battle. Jian Wushuang held his sword single-handedly. He did not use the secret skill of the ancient god clan to have 9 heads and 18 arms. To him now, having 18 arms and swords had no difference compared to holding one single sword on one hand. Having too many hands became a burden. He moved his sword around casually. Could be a thrust or a slash or a flick. Each move was smooth and decisive. He moved around elegantly and gracefully as he cast his sword skills. His vision was sharp and focused. His opponent was an elder with red hair. The sword skills of this elder were extremely fast and violent. Jian Wushuang was extremely calm in this battle. During the heated exchange, he was trying his best to find his opponent's weakness. After a while, the red-haired man slashed his sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up when he saw this move. He swung the sword in his hands as it thrust out in an eerie manner. Sword Principle Shen Luo. Sanguis Extremis Style. PFFTT. A bloody mist erupted from the elder man's chest as he backed off. This is the 16th one. Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang spent 1,000 years inside the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower sparring against other experts. Jian Wushuang had lost count of how many battles he had fought. However, he knew his sword skills were improving at a tremendous rate. No other opportunities could help him improve at such a great rate. This was because he was fighting against an expert of a completely new level. It was as though these experts had opened a new door to sword doctrine. There had been a leap in his sword skills and his understanding of sword doctrine compared to before. Jian Wushuang felt that he could kill his old self with one simple slash. That was how much he had improved. In the dark space, a space tunnel appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Looks like I took exactly 1,000 years to defeat 16 opponents. Jian Wushuang smiled as he followed the space tunnel out of the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower. Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang greeted as he bowed slightly. With the great improvement in his understanding of the Sword Doctrine, Jian Wushuang felt completely different when he looked at Emperor 13 once again. Back then, he had not had a clue how powerful Emperor 13 was. He only knew he was extremely powerful. Now, he felt that Emperor 13 himself was a unique divine sword. The sword essence that he radiated made Jian Wushuang's heart throb. Even though my understanding of the Sword Doctrine has improved greatly, I am nothing compared to Emperor 13, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He knew where he stood. He knew he still needed a lot of practice as his sword skills now were still not good enough for him to go against the Blood Emperor. When Emperor 13 fought Blood Emperor, he was under the restrictions of heaven and earth. He could only use a small portion of his sword skills. However, this little portion of his sword skills was already far superior to what Jian Wushuang had right now. How incredible were his sword skills when Emperor 13 was in his prime. Jian Wushuang could not imagine that. How many opponents did you defeat during the 1,000 years you were inside? Emperor 13 asked. While Jian Wushuang had been sparring opponents within the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, Emperor 13 had been meditating and did not take note of what happened within the tower. I defeated 16, Jian Wushuang said. 16. Emperor 13 nodded his head in approval. He expected that Jian Wushuang could defeat around 13 or 14 opponents. Jian Wushuang had gone beyond his expectations and defeated 16. The opponents within the trail tower would become increasingly stronger, and it would be increasingly more difficult to defeat them. From the moment you defeat the first opponent, you are considered an amateur in the Sword Doctrine. If you can defeat the opponents, you will have reached the initial success. When you defeat 20, you will have reached the Profound Realm. You still have a lot to work on before you reach Profound Realm, as you have only managed to defeat 16 opponents, Emperor 13 said. I've only reached initial success? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He had thought that the improvement he had over the 1,000 years was incredible enough. He had not expected that he had only reached initial success in his understanding of the Sword Doctrine. You will only reach the Profound Realm after defeating 20 opponents. What if you defeat 30, 50, or even 100 opponents? Jian Wushuang asked. You are still in the Profound Realm after defeating 30 opponents. You will only reach complete satisfactory for the Sword Doctrine after defeating 50 opponents. As for 100 opponents, you have exceeded the complete satisfactory for the Sword Doctrine and finally reached the Sword Doctrine realm. You can then be called an expert in Sword Doctrine, Emperor 13 said. Sword Doctrine realm? Jian Wushuang frowned. From what Emperor 13 had said, there were realms that differentiated people of different levels of mastery of the Sword Doctrine. Jian Wushuang still had a lot of room to improve before he could reach the Profound Realm. Even if someone surpassed being complete satisfactory for Sword Doctrine and reached the Sword Doctrine realm, they would be considered an expert in Sword Doctrine but not a top-tier one. Sword Doctrine is really broad and profound, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Of course. As for you now, you need to continuously accumulate experience to elevate your mastery of Sword Doctrine. Even the Sword Doctrine realm is a far-fetched concept for you in this era. However, initial success in Sword Doctrine is already enough for you to completely dominate everyone in this era, Emperor 13 said. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up in excitement. Jian Wushuang's mastery of Sword Doctrine was much better than it had been before. Aside from the experts from the ancient past, there would be no one within the eternal chaotic world with a greater understanding of Sword Doctrine. With his sword skill, the amount of divine power he had from the ultimate phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation and his understanding of rules of order, his fighting power was far greater than what it had been. He was so much more powerful that he himself had no idea how strong he actually was. However, he knew for sure that he could definitely beat Emperor Bai in a bat. Lord Emperor 13, thank you. Jian Wushuang thanked him gratefully. Both the heaven-suppressing monument or the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, had helped him greatly as his fighting power had skyrocketed. Both of these treasures belonged to Emperor 13. Both of these opportunities were given to him by Emperor 13. Furthermore, Emperor 13 had helped him twice before, and hence Jian Wushuang was extremely grateful. "I have already given you your opportunities, you can leave now," Emperor 13 said coldly and indifferently. Jian Wushuang felt odd. It was true that Emperor 13 had given him opportunities and treasures to help him improve. However, why had he done this? Why did he give such amazing opportunities? What was he trying to achieve? Emperor 13 did not mention this at all. Just like he had said, he would not tell Jian Wushuang anything at all. When the time was right, Jian Wushuang would know everything. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Before he had visited Emperor 13, he had many questions that he had wanted to ask and hoped for an answer from Emperor 13. Now, the number of questions he had had only increased after what he had encountered within the head, seeing the bold man from the ancient display. However, he did not ask after seeing how cold Emperor 13 was towards him. "Goodbye." Jian Wushuang bowed before leaving the way he came. Emperor 13 fell silent as he looked at Jian Wushuang as he slowly disappeared from his sight. He looked up at the bold man sitting there with a glint of uncertainty. "There isn't much time left. I tried my best to help the little one. Now, it's up to him alone to reach your benchmark. Old man, I hope everything that you are trying to do is worth it. I hope this little man can achieve it. If not, my 7-star black sect." Emperor 13 clenched his fists tightly and said no more. Jian Wushuang returned the way he came. The various defensive mechanisms were not activated. Soon, Jian Wushuang was out of Chill Wind Valley. Sigh! Jian Wushuang heaved a deep sigh after he was back on the surface. He looked back at Chill Wind Valley as he was still in shock after what he had seen. He knew that the owner of the head, the bold man, definitely had many incredible secrets. It was a pity that he was too weak to even have the right to know these secrets. During the 2,000 years that Jian Wushuang had been in the gigantic head, his overall fighting power had reached a completely new level and he was very pleased with it. "Time to return," Jian Wushuang muttered. He flipped out a transmission token. Hall Master Yuan just transmitted a message. "Hall Master Yuan, what's the matter?" Jian Wushuang asked. "It's nothing major. However, if you are free, you should go back and visit the lineage of stars," Hall Master Yuan said. "Roger." Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He then returned to the Green Fire World. After Jian Wushuang moved the headquarters of the lineage of stars, it had been growing at an incredible rate given the excellent cultivating environment Green Fire World had. Lineage of Stars had become even stronger and more powerful, even after many top-tier experts had been dying during the battle against the Three Emperors world. 30% of the territory within the Green Fire World was occupied by the different clans from the Eternal Chaotic World. Because of Jian Wushuang, Lineage of Stars had managed to secure a bigger territory compared to the other clans. A brilliant galaxy hovered in the air. The galaxy had completely recovered due to the abundance in spiritual influence of heaven and earth. The galaxy was even more brilliant and vast than it had been before. The power of the formation was even more powerful as well. Using special techniques, it could help out the disciples of the Lineage of Stars greatly. Jian Wushuang appeared within the brilliant galaxy. "It has been a long time since I was here at the Lineage of Stars." Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He usually remained within Wushuang City. He left the matters within the Lineage of Stars to Hall Master Yuan. After the great battle, he had been in slumber for 24,000 years, before he had gone to Chill Wind Valley. As Palace Master, Jian Wushuang had not come back to the Lineage of Stars for a very long time. The changes within the Lineage of Stars after all these years were huge. He could feel the difference when he stepped into the vast galaxy. The galaxy is completely different. The number of meta-beasts born from the galaxy is far more than before. They also have a much greater effect on cultivators. Jian Wushuang smiled as his soul power spread out and covered the entire galaxy. He could sense that there were many meta-beasts within the galaxy, and they were very beneficial for the disciples when they cultivated. As of now, there were several disciples trying to capture the meta-beasts. Jian Wushuang smiled as he walked towards the interior of the galaxy. Soon, he appeared within the headquarters of Lineage of Stars. After he had returned to the headquarters, he realized there were far more experts and disciples than there had been before. Both the numbers and quality of experts had increased greatly. Within the Lineage of Stars, the disciples were separated into 3 levels. Everyone started as a normal disciple before they were promoted to core disciple. Finally, they would be promoted to disciples of Star Palace. The number of disciples of Star Palace had increased as well. There were 10 disciples of Star Palace for each level in the realm of Universe God. Every one of them was a top-tier geniuses. For Phase 3 Universe God, every single disciple of Star Palace was enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. While Jian Wushuang was still a disciple of Star Palace, it would be difficult to find other disciples of Star Palace who were also enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. It seemed it's not as difficult for a Phase 3 Universe God to be enlightened to the power of Heaven Way now. This was due to the cultivating environment. After Jian Wushuang entered the headquarters of the Lineage of Stars, he roamed around within the Lineage of Stars instead of going to find Hallmaster Yuan. Soon, a battle between disciples caught his attention. This battle occurred at one of the stars. The 2 people battling it out were both Phase 3 Universe Gods. One of them was a disciple of Star Palace, while the other was just a core disciple. This battle attracted the attention of many other disciples as they crowded around to watch. Jian Wushuang was within the crowd. Both senior brothers are very powerful. Senior brother Tianyi and senior brother Chenfeng both are enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. However, senior brother Chenfeng was enlightened for a long period of time. Furthermore, he is a disciple of the Star Palace and should be stronger. Look, senior brother Tianyi is already suppressed. Even though senior brother Tianyi is a top-tier core disciple, he still has work to do before he can beat senior brother Chenfeng. Jian Wushuang heard the surrounding chatter. He shook his head slightly and said, Tianyi's sword skill is not so simple. He might win this battle. Jian Wushuang commented casually. Jian Wushuang could see that Tianyi had yet to use all his sword skills considering his battle experience and how much more powerful he was. Right after he commented, several disciples looked over at Jian Wushuang. You think senior brother Chenfeng will lose? Are you kidding? That's right. Senior brother Chenfeng is a disciple of the Star Palace. Hey, who are you? Why have I never seen you before? Furthermore, what do you mean when you say senior brother Chenfeng will lose to senior brother Tianyi? A teenage girl in purple clothes stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was stunned. Right then, Tianyi finally used all his sword skills. It was swift and decisive as he immediately turned the battle around. Within moments, he had defeated Chenfeng. He really won? The teenage girl in purple clothes was shocked as they had all expected Chenfeng to win. In the arena, Chenfeng looked at Tianyi and raged. Your sword skills, senior brother Chenfeng. Hall Master He Shou mentored me personally. That is why I had a breakthrough in my sword skills. Otherwise, there would be no way I could beat you, Tianyi said. Is that the case? The disciples watching then understood what had happened. The most powerful man in the Lineage of Stars was the Palace Master. Below the Palace Master were the Hall Masters, who were all almighties. Among all the Hall Masters, Hall Master He Shou was one that many respected greatly. He himself was a genius who was incredibly powerful. By many myths, he was also a lineal disciple of the Palace Master. He was one of the most powerful men in the Lineage of Stars. It would have been weird if one did not improve greatly after being mentored by him personally. After hearing the explanation, Chenfeng felt more at ease. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang looked weird. He Shou was his lineal disciple. Never have I thought that little brat would have such a high status within the Lineage of Stars. Jian Wushuang smiled. You there. You have yet to answer my question. How did you know senior brother Tianyi has yet to use all his sword skills? Furthermore, who are you? The teenage girl in purple clothes asked Jian Wushuang again. I guessed it, Jian Wushuang answered casually. You guessed it. The teenage girl in purple clothes did not want to let Jian Wushuang go just like that. Right then, whoosh, A top figure appeared on the star as the aura of a top-tier chaotic real god radiated out in all directions. All the disciples on that planet panicked. "What are all of you doing?" It was a graceful, handsome young man. Even though he was not angry, everyone was afraid. He scanned the crowd as all the disciples, including Tianyi and Chun Feng, lowered their heads. Aside from Jian Wushuang, no one dared to look him in the eye. This graceful young man noticed Jian Wushuang. The graceful young man turned pale as he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang at the next moment. "Greetings, Palace Master." The graceful young man greeted as he broke out in cold sweat. The reason why he radiated out his aura was to control the situation. He had never thought that Jian Wushuang would be in the crowd as well. "Ling Feibai, it has been a while. How are you?" Jian Wushuang smiled. This graceful young man was Ling Feibai. They had both been disciples of the Star Palace at one point in time. When Jian Wushuang had just joined the Star Palace, he had fought Ling Feibai and lost to him. Now that they had met again, their fighting power and status were incomparable. However, Ling Feibai was a genius. He was the strongest top-tier chaotic real god. His name was on the real god ranking list, and he had high hopes of breaking through to become an almighty. "Palace Master still remembers me." Ling Feibai was pleasantly surprised. Seeing this, the other disciples were shocked. "Who is he? Why does Elder He Ling treat him so respectfully?" Elder He Ling is one of the most powerful real gods within the lineage of stars. He does not even treat an ordinary hall master with this much respect. If I heard correctly, Elder Ling called him Palace Master? Palace Master? Which Palace Master? The disciples were shocked. Palace Master? How many Palace Masters were there within the lineage of Star? There was only one. The identity of the man in front of them. "There are some things I have to do. I shall take my leave." Jian Wushuang smiled as he disappeared from everyone's sight. After Jian Wushuang left, everyone on the star erupted into a frenzy. "Palace Master. Oh my God. I actually saw the Palace Master himself." The Palace Master of the lineage of stars is one of the most powerful men in the eternal chaotic world. He managed to turn the tides of the great battle more than 20,000 years ago and was our savior. He just appeared in front of us. It really is the Palace Master. Never had I thought that he would be this easygoing. The disciples started to chatter in excitement. Jian Wushuang was referred to as a legend. Within the eternal chaotic world, many young cultivators respected him and believed in him blindly, especially those from the lineage of stars and the green fire world. However, it would be extremely difficult for even almighties to meet him personally. As for these disciples in the realm of universe gods, it was all the more impossible to meet him. However, Jian Wushuang had just appeared in front of them. "Oh my God! I just spoke to the Palace Master and he replied." The teenage girl in purple clothes was dazed. She was overwhelmed with excitement. At the same time, she finally knew why Jian Wushuang knew that Tianyi had yet to use all his sword skills. Even though it was Hall Master He who had mentored Tianyi, Hall Master He Xiu was Jian Wushuang's disciple. Jian Wushuang did not know that the disciples had reacted that way. He had appeared on that star to view the battle between the disciples as it had piqued his interest. After he left that star, Jian Wushuang reached the meeting hall within the lineage of stars where Hall Master Yuan, He Xiu, Hall Master Gu Xian and others were waiting. Jian Wushuang sat on the throne within the meeting hall and the remaining 10 experts sat below him. The number of almighties within the lineage of stars was higher more than before. Some of these almighties were originally disciples within the lineage of stars, while others were experts that came and pledged their loyalty. During the battle, the lineage of stars suffered heavy losses. Emperor God Zhuyin, Emperor God Shenwu and Hall Master Nyeyun died, and lineage of stars needed experts to fill the gaps. Right now, these almighties looked at Jian Wushuang respectfully. "Come, speak. What happened?" Jian Wushuang asked as he looked down at everyone. Hall Master Yuan stood up and said, "Palace Master, as you know, the lineage of stars is getting stronger by the day. Our influence and standing in the eternal chaotic world is also improving. Now we are wondering what to do to those enemies we had. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Lineage of Stars indeed had many enemies. Back then, there had been 3 forces that had allied together and attacked their headquarters. Luckily, he had been there. With the help of Emperor 13, they had defeated this wave of enemies. After that, because of the Great War, the lineage of Stars had focused on improving their own strength. However, they would still fight there and teach their enemies if necessary. However, they had already settled their grudges with some of their enemies. Just like Abysmal Palace Jian Wushuang and Abysmal Saint Master settled their grudges and became good friends. Lineage of Stars and Abysmal Palace would not have any more disputes as both parties were already on good terms. Like Soaring Heaven King Palace. Soaring Heaven King Palace had offended Jian Wushuang the most back then. However, with Jian Wushuang's current power level, he did not care about Soaring Heaven King Palace. Furthermore, the leader of the Soaring Heaven King Palace, Great Emperor Tianling, had fought together with Jian Wushuang during the battle at the Three Emperors World. Great Emperor Tianling had given his all during the battle. Hence the hatred between Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace was not as strong anymore. After the battle, Great Emperor Tianling had apologized to Jian Wushuang personally. Even though on a personal level, their grudge was settled, their respective clans still hated each other. The lineage of Stars now was extremely powerful. Even though they had not eliminated their enemies, it was normal for the lineage of Stars to make lives for their enemies difficult. Jian Wushuang knew about this. Of course, lineage of Stars would not cross certain boundaries and they knew their limits. Why? Are our enemies still trying something funny? Jian Wushuang looked at Hall Master Yuan and asked. These enemies knew their place and did not try anything funny at all. When they saw people from the lineage of Stars, they would hide and would not offend us at all. However, the real martial arts divine church started behaving abnormally recently, Hall Master Yuan said. Real martial arts divine church? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real Martial Arts Divine Church was one of 5 members of the Star Extermination Alliance. However, after the battle back at the old location of Lineage of Stars, Real Martial Arts Divine Church had suffered heavy losses. Their leader was killed and their fighting power plummeted. On top of that, Lineage of Stars had continued to suppress them. This church was at the brink of annihilation. Lineage of Stars had stopped suppressing them after the ancient battlefield had appeared around the Green Fire world. Then, the Great War broke out and most of the other clans had been preoccupied fighting the war. They did not have excess manpower or strength to take note of the insignificant church. This had allowed them to barely survive till this day. If I am not wrong, the real martial arts divine church did not participate in the battle against Three Emperors World. Am I right? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes. When the battle broke out, experts from most clans within the eternal chaotic world joined the war. Some clans sent every single member they had, while there were some that did not participate at all. The clans that did not join used the reason that they were too weak not to reject the call of duty. The real martial arts divine church was one of such clans. Hall Master Yuan nodded his head and said, Of course, the real martial arts divine church was at the brink of collapse and did not want to send any almighties to the front line. The Sanctuary Alliance sympathized with them and did not force them to participate. After the Great War, the power of the other clans were greatly weakened, but not the real martial arts divine church. They managed to survive their predicament and became one of the more powerful clans. So the abnormality that you were talking about just now is that the real martial arts divine church started to treat us like enemies again, right? Jian Wushuang said coldly. That is right. The real martial arts divine church originally kept a low profile, even during the 24,000 years that you were in slumber. However, their attitudes changed in the last 1,000 years. They were no longer afraid and acted high and mighty. Then they dealt with us. Under normal circumstances, the lineage of stars would not cause trouble for the real martial arts divine church. However, during this period of time, the real martial arts divine church started to cause trouble for us. They even started to fight us head-on. It was like they were emboldened by something and no longer feared us. Is that the case? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. From what Hall Master Yuan had said, Jian Wushuang had noticed that the real martial arts divine church was acting abnormally. Because of Jian Wushuang, the lineage of stars had the best resources and was one of the most dominant forces in the eternal chaotic world. Which clan dared to make lineage of stars their enemies? Even if they suffered losses due to the lineage of stars, they would not take it to heart or tolerate these losses quietly. This was especially the case for the enemies of lineage of stars, as they were extremely careful not to anger their enemy. The real martial arts divine church did not keep a low profile, but provoked the lineage of stars actively? It might have been all right if they had provoked them while Jian Wushuang was in slumber. The reason could have been because they thought Jian Wushuang would not awaken, which would cause lineage of stars to lose their greatest asset. However, they had been extremely respectful while Jian Wushuang was in slumber and became more aggressive when Jian Wushuang awakened, to the point they dared to fight lineage of stars head-on. Hall Master Yuan is right. Where does the real martial arts divine church get their courage from? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Within the eternal chaotic world, who dared to go against Jian Wushuang besides Emperor Bai? Even the great emperors did not have the courage to do so. Hall Master Yuan, have you sent experts to investigate this matter? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, after the most recent fight we had, I sent Emperor God Ling Chu to investigate the matter. Lineage of stars had many almighties and emperor gods. Emperor God Ling Chu was one of them. The leader of the real martial arts divine church died and was a lot weaker compared to before. The number of almighties they have is limited and they only had one ordinary emperor god. However, after Emperor God Ling Chu reached the territory that the real martial arts divine church controlled, we lost contact. If I am not wrong, Emperor God Ling Chu has already died, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh? Before he died, did he send any message back? Jian Wushuang asked. Nope. I only knew that he entered the territory controlled by the real martial arts divine church. Before he could send me any more messages, he died. Hall Master Yuan said as he shook his head. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and thought seriously. Emperor gods were one of the most powerful kinds of people within the eternal chaotic world. It was not difficult to kill an emperor god, as many peak emperor gods could do that. But it was not easy to kill one without giving him a chance to transmit a message. Looks like something happened within the real martial arts divine church, Jian Wushuang muttered. He had a keen look. This was the reason why I messaged you, Hall Master Yuan said. All right, I will settle this. Disciple, do you have anything important to settle in the short run? Jian Wushuang said. No, He Shou answered. If that is the case, follow me to the territory that the real martial arts divine church controls, Jian Wushuang instructed. Roger. He Shou nodded his head. Soon Jian Wushuang set off. The real martial arts divine church was located in one of the sanctuaries and occupied a large territory. Before the battle at the Lineage of Stars, the real martial arts divine church had been an overlord in this territory and was one of the strongest clans in the eternal chaotic world. After the battle in the Lineage of Stars, their leader had died and their overall combat power was far worse compared to before. Even though they were still the most powerful clan on their territory, they were not as dominant anymore. However, within the last 1,000 years, the real martial arts divine church seemed to have recovered. They had become as dominant and overbearing as before. They had even dared to provoke Lineage of Stars. Those clans that tried something funny during the time they were weak were all eliminated. The real martial arts divine church had once again become the overlord of this territory, and no one dared to provoke them. Within the real martial arts divine church, an elder man in white robes was in an independent space somewhere within the group of majestic buildings. The aura from this elder man was of the level of Emperor God. He was the last Emperor God that the real martial arts divine church had, Emperor God Bai Xing. Emperor God Bai Xing was one of the weakest Emperor gods in the eternal chaotic world. However, he was still an Emperor God, and hence he took over the real martial arts divine church and became its new leader. Church Master. A man in crimson armor appeared beside Emperor God Bai Xing. Have you done the final checks? Emperor Go Bai Xing asked coldly. Yes. There are a total of 12,000 people that come from outside the sanctuary. We have checked that they are virgins under the age of 30. According to the Lord's request, they have never cultivated nor explored the outside world before. The man in crimson armor said. Okay. Emperor God Bai Xing nodded his head as he looked up at a floating island in the sky. Many beautiful girls sat on the barren island. They were not cultivators, evident from the fact that they did not radiate any spiritual power. They looked around, confused. They did not know where they were or what was going to happen to them. This batch is good. The Lord should be satisfied. Now go and prepare the next batch, Emperor God Bai Xing said. Don't worry, Church Master. I have already conquered 10 ancient worlds and commanded them to groom young girls who do not cultivate or venture out to explore the world. Even though it is difficult to have 1 out of 1,000, it should be all right if 10 of these ancient worlds groom at the same time. This can guarantee that we have enough numbers for the next batch 30 years later. The man in blood armor said confidently. That's good. Due to what happened to us back during the Great Battle, we were almost annihilated. Thank God we met the 3 lords. With their help, the real martial arts divine church can return to, or even exceed its former glory. It is even possible to outshine Lineage of Stars, and even Green Fire World, to become the most powerful clan in the eternal chaotic world. Emperor God Bai Xing nodded his head and said, That's right. The man in crimson armor nodded his head seriously. He was absolutely confident in the 3 lords. Okay, can you take your leave first? I will inform the lords to come over soon, Emperor God Bai Xing said. I shall take my leave, the man in crimson armor said. Emperor God Bai Xing waited for a short while. Whoosh! A middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes appeared. Greetings, my lord. According to your request, I have prepared another batch of 12,000 virgins. Emperor God Bai Xing greeted respectfully. Yes? The middle-aged man nodded his head as he looked up at the island filled with beautiful girls. He stuck out his tongue and gave a bloodthirsty smile. The middle-aged man then flew towards the island. Emperor God Bai Xing turned back towards and left for his independent space. At the same time, he could clearly hear the sad and painful screeches and screams. Emperor God Bai Xing did not hesitate at all as he quickly left the independent space and waited patiently. 7 days later, the middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes walked out of the independent space. When he came out, his robes were blood red. His tongue was still out, licking what remaining blood there was around his lips. He looked hungry for more. I'll come again after 30 years, the middle-aged man said before he left. See you, my lord. Emperor God Bai Xing watched the middle-aged man leave as he returned to the independent space. The independent space turned into hell. On the island at the center, there was a sea of blood as the dead bodies of girls were stacked up like mountains. Emperor God Bai Xing did not feel bad at all as he commanded people to start cleaning this place up. This was to provide a comfortable environment for the middle-aged when he would return 30 years later. As for the middle-aged man, he returned back to a quiet palace. When he appeared there, a blurry figure appeared from thin air. The middle-aged man looked serious when he saw the consciousness incarnation and greeted, Brother, you went to absorb the blood of virgins? The blurry figure asked. The middle-aged man laughed, embarrassed. Didn't your older brother warn you to stop this addiction? The blurry figure said with a deep voice. Brother, you too know that we were in slumber for so many years. It has been too long since I tasted the splendid virgin blood. I finally managed to awaken. Of course, I will take this chance to have a taste, the middle-aged man said. After hearing what the middle-aged man had said, the blurry figure fell silent. That it was true that they had been in slumber for far too long. It was so long that they themselves had no idea how long they had been in slumber. After the great battle of the ancient past, they had been in slumber. Originally, there had been 5 of them. During the great battle, 2 of them died. Now, only the eldest brother, the second, and the youngest were alive. The youngest of them had a unique addiction. He liked to take in virgin blood. Back in the ancient past, there had been numerous experts, hence he had still held back. He only went crazy now because he was in an era in which he did not need to hold back and he had finally awakened after such a long time. Brother, I will allow you to continue because you just awakened. However, please keep a low profile, the blurry figure reminded. Don't worry. I asked the people from the real martial arts divine church to get those female virgins. There won't be too much commotion as these females aren't cultivators and have no background. The middle-aged man smiled. The blurry figure nodded his head slightly and stopped reprimanding. Oh yes, have the real martial arts divine church prepared the resources we need? The blurry figure asked. Yes, they have prepared them all. They are with me. However, these treasures are not of good quality. The middle-aged man brought out a Chen Kuan ring and said. The blurry figure scanned the ring, not surprised at all. This era is far different from ours. They are doing well from the fact that they can still find these resources. At least these resources are beneficial to me and our older brother. Even though this era is far worse, there are still many resources out there. The main point is that the real martial arts divine church is too weak and cannot be even considered a top-tier clan. Their means are limited, so of course they cannot get us all the good stuff. It would be a different story if it was Sanctuary Alliance. Brother, I don't understand why we are staying within a mere real martial arts divine church. With our current fighting power, we can forcefully take over Sanctuary Alliance and use their power to find all the resources we need. Would that not be much faster and more efficient? The middle-aged man asked. It's not as easy as you think. Even though the average power level of this era is nothing compared to our era, that is because of restrictions of heaven and earth. We too are under these restrictions and the maximum fighting power we can have is peak chaotic realm. We might not be strong compared to the top-tier experts in this era. For example, even our older brother is not confident in defeating the strongest two-man in this era, Emperor Bai and Sword Emperor. They are just natives of this era. How strong can they be? The middle-aged man said disapprovingly. Do not look down on them. Don't forget Blood Emperor from 20,000 years ago. He was an emperor of the Blood Clan. Even though the Blood Clan had many emperors, those who reach that level are definitely much stronger than me and our older brother. And that Blood Emperor died in the hands of the natives you mentioned. The blurry figure said seriously. Furthermore, what we are targeting is Heaven's horizon. There is no need for us to provoke the experts from this era. Hence, you should maintain a low profile. Do not blame me for not helping you if you anger a top-tier expert from this era and die in their hands. After the blurry figure said this, he disappeared. The middle-aged man curled his lips, evidence that he did not take what the blurry figure said seriously. On the territory that the real martial arts divine church controlled, in a large town near the headquarters of the real martial arts divine church, Jian Wushuang was in a tavern in the town drinking wine. Xianxia, who carried a long sword behind his back, appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Master! Xianxia greeted Jian Wushuang respectfully. Don't be so tense. Sit down and relax. Jian Wushuang waved his hands. Yes. Xianxia nodded his head as he sat down in front of Jian Wushuang. How was the search? Jian Wushuang asked. I checked 3 different intel departments. The intel I got was the same. No one saw Emperor God Ling Chu from the lineage of stars. Furthermore, in recent years, there was no battle between any almighties in this territory. However, Emperor God Ling Chu did enter this territory before disappearing. Xianxia said as he frowned. An expert in the Emperor God realm had gone missing without any commotion at all. It was as though this Emperor God had never set foot here. This meant, it is okay. Since we cannot get any useful intel from these intel departments, let us find the experts from the real martial arts divine church and ask them. Jian Wushuang smiled. Does Master want to confront the real martial arts divine church head-on? Xianxia asked. Confront the real martial arts divine church? I do not know what they have. It is not wise to confront them head-on. Furthermore, if the experts hiding within the real martial arts divine church saw me coming and ran away, what can we do? Jian Wushuang shook his head and said. Xianxia was stunned for a moment before understanding why. There is no need for us to confront them in their headquarters. We can just bait them out. The best-case scenario is we force them to use their trump card. Disciple, I shall leave this to you, Jian Wushuang said casually. I understand. He nodded his head as an idea formed in his head. He left once again. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang sat at the window seat in the Tarvan. He smiled lightly as he drank wine and looked at the scenery outside the window. The town that Jian Wushuang was in was near the real martial arts divine church. Hence many of their disciples were gathered there. Many of the top-tier experts and almighties would also appear here. Even now, there was an almighty from the real martial arts divine church here at this town. Within a secret room, many figures gathered here, and the leader was the man in crimson armor. The Lord is satisfied with this batch of virgins. These are your rewards. The man in crimson armor threw a Chen Kuan ring to the people in front of him. When the people scanned the ring, they were all pleasantly surprised. The man in crimson armor then said, I have already given you the rewards. Remember, bring the virgins here every 30 years. Do not be negligent. If the Lord is angry, no one can save you. Yes, yes. The figures within the room nodded their heads. Right then, boom. A loud bang was heard as a sword light appeared out of nowhere and sliced the secret room. The ruthless sword light tore everyone apart and killed them instantly. Only the man in crimson armor survived. Damn it! Seeing the dead bodies around him, the man in crimson armor looked dark. He looked at the man entering the room coldly. Who are you? Lineage of Stars, He said coldly. You are from Lineage of Stars? The man in crimson armor was first stunned, before breaking out in rage. How dare you appear here and kill so many experts from the real martial arts divine church? You speak too much. He did not want to waste time speaking and attacked. Sword essence turned into a brilliant crimson sword river. The crimson sword river was very attractive. It appeared in front of the man in crimson armor in a flash. So fast. The man in crimson armor was shocked as he instinctively raised the battle blade he was holding to block the attack. Clang! A loud collision was heard as a vast amount of energy exploded beside the right arm of the man in crimson armor. He backed off quickly. How is this possible? We are both in the realm of Sir God. But why is he so much stronger than me? The man in crimson armor was in disbelief as he flipped out a transmission token and requested backup. Seeing this, he squinted his eyes. He was not angry. Instead, he was elated. He wanted the man in crimson to ask for help. Die! He roared as he continued to attack. A continuous stream of sword essence completely suppressed the man in crimson armor. These two Sir Gods started to battle it out at the center of the town. The peaceful town became noisy as the two started to battle. A large amount of cultivators rose to the air to watch the battle. This is a battle between almighties? I recognize the man using the battle blade. He is Sir God Immortal from the real martial arts divine church. I don't recognize the other man. However, he is very powerful as he can completely suppress Sir God Immortal. Real martial arts divine church's headquarters is right around the corner. He dares to attack Sir God Immortal here. The experts from real martial arts divine church should be on their way. Many of the cultivators chattered. Many of the cultivators from the Tarvan walked out to watch the battle. Jian Wushuang was the only one who sat there, smiling, holding a winning trophy in his hand. Even though he was not looking at the battlefield, his soul power encompassed the entire area and he could see everything clearly. Haha! His sword skills have improved greatly over these years. Jian Wushuang smiled lightly. He knew clearly that he was definitely a top-tier Sir God and could put up a fight against Emperor Gods. As for Sir God Immortal, he was just an ordinary Sir God. By rights, he could have killed him easily. Of course, he was holding back and had intentionally suppressed Sir God Immortal. His purpose was simple: attract more experts from the real martial arts divine church to come over. Emperor God Baixing, who was within the real martial arts divine church, had received the message from Sir God Immortal. He from the Lineage of Stars came to the territory controlled by the real martial arts divine church and is fighting Immortal right now? Emperor God Baixing squinted his eyes as he had a cold look. Humph! I knew that lineage of stars would definitely do something when Emperor God Ling Chu disappeared in my territory. I did not expect them to come so quickly. Church Master, I have heard of He Xiu. Apparently, he is a lineal disciple of the Sword Emperor and has great fighting power. Even though he is only in the realm of Sir God, he can go head-to-head with Emperor Gods. With his fighting power, Mo Qiu should be in a bad spot. We should go and reinforce him quickly, a Sir God said. Of course we will go and reinforce him. However, the lineage of stars must have some trump cards if they dare to come all the way here. He Xiu will not be the only expert. There will definitely be other experts hidden somewhere, Emperor God said in a low voice. This is what we will do. The few of you will go and reinforce Mo Qiu immediately. Bring along 2 blood slaves with you. If you run into trouble, let these 2 blood slaves go and settle it. If they can't, message me and I will ask the Lord to help us. Yes. The few Sir Gods nodded their heads solemnly and set off. He Xiu and Mo Qiu were still fighting in the large town. Naturally, Sir God Mo Qiu kept retreating. Right when Sir God Mo Qiu could not take it anymore, 3 figures appeared in the distance. How dare you, He Xiu? Humph! Even if you are from the lineage of stars, we will not let you leave easily when you murder someone within the real martial arts divine church territory. 2 yells were heard. The surrounding cultivators heard the 2 yells and they understood why He Xiu dared to attack. So that man is from the lineage of stars? No wonder he dared to attack. I heard that the lineage of stars and the real martial arts divine church were enemies. While the spectators were exclaiming, the 3 Sir Gods linked up with Mo Qiu as they looked at He Xiu angrily. Is that all that came? He Xiu face darkened. The few of us are more than enough to take care of you. Attack now, suppress him. Then, ask his master, the Sword Emperor, to come personally to collect him. One of the Sir Gods said. There was an uproar from everyone in the town. Suppress He Xiu, then ask the Sword Emperor personally to get him? Within the eternal chaotic world, those who were educated all knew who the Sword Emperor was. He was one of the most powerful men within the eternal chaotic world. A mere real martial arts divine church was not qualified for the Sword Emperor to come down personally. Haha! His tone is really demanding. Jian Wushuang smiled lightly. At the center of the town, He Xiu started fighting against the 4 Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church. Even though he had been fighting 4 alone, he was not afraid at all. He no longer held back and fought with all his might. He had fought 4 Sir Gods and was still at an advantage. He Xiu flicked his sword up as a ghostly sword light pierced the chest of one of the Sir Gods. There was a large wound on his chest. He was severely injured. The 4 Sir Gods were already at a disadvantage. With one of them getting injured, their disadvantage in battle grew bigger. This He Xiu is definitely the lineal disciple of the Sword Emperor. He is extremely powerful. If this continues, the 4 of us might be defeated by him. The more the 4 Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church fought, the more surprised they were at He Xiu's battle power. We have no choice. Use the blood slaves, one of the Sir Gods said coldly. The other 3 nodded their heads in approval. The Sir God waved his hands as 2 figures which radiated enormous amounts of blood qi appeared in the sky above. Ha! He Xiu focused his eyes before staring at one of the figures. He was looking at a pale, weak, and skinny elder man. The aura this man radiated was at the level of Emperor God. Emperor God Ling Chu. He Xiu was shocked. This weak and elder man was Emperor God Ling Chu from Lineage of Stars. He was the one who had gone missing after reaching this place. No one had expected him to appear so suddenly. Even though his aura was still at the level of an Emperor God, the vibes he had were completely different. What happened? What did you do to Emperor God Ling Chu? He Xiu asked. Haha. What happened to him? We just made him into a blood slave. Don't worry, you will become like him soon. The Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church laughed. He Xiu looked dark. He could see that Emperor God Ling Chu and the other Peak Sir God had lost their own consciousness and were staring at him in a hostile manner. In the Tarvan far away, are they under soul control? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes as he studied the two figures who radiated large amounts of blood qi. No. Even if they are under soul control, their vitality signs would be there and the vibes they give would be like any other humans. However, these two people here have no vitality signs at all. It is as though they are battle puppets. Battle puppets? Jian Wushuang had already realized that Emperor God Ling Chu and the other Peak Sir God had been made into battle puppets using certain weird techniques. To forcefully make an Emperor God into a battle puppet was much more cruel than soul control. Looks like my deductions are right. There are people supporting them. And these people come from... Jian Wushuang started to think to himself. On the battlefield. Blood slave, kill him, the Sir God from the real martial arts divine church ordered. The two blood slaves did not hesitate and attacked Hishio. One of the battle puppets was an Emperor God while the other was a Peak Sir God. This was a much more powerful lineup compared to the four Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church. Emperor God Ling Chu was already very powerful among the Emperor Gods. After he had become a blood slave, his battle power had become one level higher and he could put heavy pressure on Hishio. I cannot fend off Emperor God Ling Chu alone. Hishio knew this clearly. Hence, when Emperor God Ling Chu moved, he waved his hands and summoned four figures who were in gray armor. These four figures were four silver armor Dao soldiers. Jian Wushuang deliberately told Hishio to bring these Dao soldiers along before they set off. Any one of the four silver armor Dao soldiers had the power of an ordinary Emperor God, though they lacked fighting techniques. However, four of such Dao soldiers could still stop Emperor God Ling Chu easily. As long as Emperor God Ling Chu was stopped, Hishio could take care of the last Peak Sir God easily. The battle continued at the center of the town. It became increasingly fierce. Initially, the four Sir Gods were pleased when they had just brought out the blood slave. However, that changed when they saw that Hishio had deployed the four Dao soldiers which had stopped Emperor God Ling Chu. Hishio brought four silver armor Dao soldiers? This is troublesome. With the four silver armor Dao soldiers, there is nothing we can do even if we have two blood slaves. Quick! Update what happened here to the church master. Let him make the decision. The four Sir Gods messaged Emperor God Bai Xing immediately. Within the headquarters of the real martial arts divine church. As expected, things are not so simple. We only know that Hishio has four Dao silver armor Dao soldiers. If I am not wrong, there are other experts hiding in the dark, or he has other tricks up his sleeves. Emperor God Bai Xing was not surprised when he received the message. There is nothing the two blood slaves and Mo Chio and friends can do in this situation. Even if I was there, the experts from Lineage of Stars would intercept me. If this is the case, I shall ask the lords for help. Emperor God Bai Xing no longer hesitated and went to look for the lords immediately. Within one of the quiet palaces. Lord! Emperor God Bai Xing stood respectfully in front of the middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes. What is the matter? The middle-aged man raised his head and looked at Emperor God Bai Xing. His attitude was extremely cold. Emperor God Bai Xing was only an emperor god. Back in the ancient past, he had just been an ordinary expert in the middle-stage chaotic realm. The middle-aged man would not take him seriously. The middle-aged man would not even take the entire real martial arts divine church. If not for his special addiction to virgin blood and his elder brothers needing resources, he would not have had any interactions with the real martial arts divine church. Lord, previously you made Emperor God Ling Chu into a blood slave. The clan he was from, Lineage of Stars, sent experts here. They are now at one of the towns outside of the real martial arts divine church and are fighting with the experts from our church. They might not be able to hold on for long, Emperor God Bai Xing said carefully. The middle-aged man had a calm manner. The real martial arts divine church did search for certain resources under the command of him and his two brothers. He knew that the method that the church had used would definitely provoke other clans. Hence, they had agreed that they would help if the church encountered any problems. When Emperor God Ling Chu first reached the territory belonging to the real martial arts divine church, the middle-aged man settled him personally. This is quite annoying. How many people did Lineage of Stars send, and what realms are they in? The middle-aged man asked casually. From what we know, they only sent one Sir God named Xiao, Emperor God Bai Xing said. This is ridiculous. You ask me to help you to deal with a Sir God? Are the people from the real martial arts divine church all useless? The middle-aged man roared in anger. Lord, please calm down. Even though he is a Sir God, he is a genius. His fighting power is that of an ordinary Emperor God. Furthermore, he brought along 4 silver armor Dao soldiers. Emperor God Bai Xing quickly explained.